Welcome back to Wednesday night. You know what that means? The best combination in the land, Better Sports Network, and the Dynasty Nerds together again on a Wednesday night. Great show planned for you this week. Now, last week I was not here. I apologize. I was getting nice and tan in the Bahamas. Actually, I didn't really get super tan. It's decently cloudy in the Bahamas while we were there, which was kind of weird. So not as bronzed as you would have hoped, or I would have hoped anyway. But yes, so I was gone last week. Dennis, fantastic job filling in for me. Of course, he will be here tonight. We'll be talking about some players on the contending teams that we want to buy a little bit. And then Peter is joining us again, and we're going to be talking about rebuilding pieces that you want to buy at the deadline time. So it's going to be a really good show lined up. Now, a little bit different schedule than normal. Typically, we kind of bring the guests on right after the first few minutes of my little intro and rant of whatever I'm talking about that day. But Peter's actually not going to be joining us until about 9:15. So he'll be joining us at 9:15. So I'm going to take a little time early. And if the people aren't ready, the people aren't ready. That's fine. But I'm going to be taking some time early on in these first 15 minutes, getting those trade questions. So if you have any trade questions, we are getting close to the NFL trade deadline. I know there's some leagues that observe the NFL trade deadline as their trade deadline as well. I think that is way too soon. I love pushing the trade deadline off as close to the playoffs as I can. Now, I don't want to be trading in playoffs. Now, there are leagues that allow that. There are leagues that allow trading during the playoffs. That's not my favorite personally. I prefer to not be able to trade once you get to the playoffs because, look, once you get there, you should be dancing with the one that brought you. You know, if an injury happens, that sucks, but you should have prepared and had depth at that position. It's that's how I feel. I know other people feel differently, but that's how I feel. So I've seen people that teams that were okay, but had a couple nice weeks, and all of a sudden they're on the ship, and now they sell the farm and get Christian McCaffrey and Keenan Allen and somebody else to their team all of a sudden for championship week, and you're like, that's not the team that got here. So I don't like trading all the way up, and or I should say I like trading up till the playoffs. But once you get to the playoffs, that should be the team that you're rolling with. I don't want to see trades happening during the playoffs. But to each his own. Some leagues love that. Some leagues love getting to trade until the very last moment. Other leagues, like mine, I like all the way up to the playoffs. Then there are some leagues, like I mentioned, that they're going to cut it off this week. And if you're cutting it off this week, you need to get those trade questions answered. So feel free to drop those in the chat, and I will get to as many of those as I can get to. So let's talk about the actual NFL trade deadline, because we're not going to be talking about that as much with Dennis and Peter tonight. But I did want to talk about that personally because there are some names that could get moved at the trade deadline. Obviously, last year, the biggest name that got moved, Christian McCaffrey, sent shockwaves. I was actually live on this show when the Christian McCaffrey trade happened. So it was pretty fun to get to talk about it live on the air. It was a wild moment. But that being said, there were other guys too. Chase Claypool got traded, and we thought that might have some significance. It had literally no significance at all. So there are positional trades that do happen in season. A few that I think we need to watch out for. The biggest one is Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, with this being his last season, this team obviously trending in the direction of maybe not being very relevant anymore. They could easily move on from Derrick Henry. And they're honestly sort of lucky to be 2-5. A couple of those other games were real close nail biters that they could have easily lost as well. So I think there's a decent trade if they can find the right valuation. I think that's where the hard part's going to be, is how much do you really pay for an old running back that's in the last year of his contract? One of the popular destinations for Derrick Henry that's been talked about, floated out there, the Baltimore Ravens. I think that would be a fantastic fantastic landing spot for Derrick Henry. His downhill running, you add that to Lamar Jackson's speed, the RPO there would be a nightmare for teams. Then looking at maybe the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills could use that between the tackles grinder, not have to use Josh Allen so much at the goal line. I think Derrick Henry would be a really, really good fit in Buffalo. So there's definitely other teams that could potentially acquire his services. Never rule out Dallas in any trade ever. They absolutely could be involved with a guy like Derrick Henry. So we'll kind of have to wait and see how it all plays out. But I think those are the three teams, specifically those first two, are ones that I really have on my radar. And then we'll kind of see after that if there's another team that makes sense that they end up putting into the fold or not. Another guy that I think could be, I guess two guys. I think one's more likely to be traded than the other, but two guys that could absolutely be on the block as well. The Denver Bronco wide receivers, guys like Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton, both are in situations contract-wise. It would not be hard to move those players. It'd probably be advantageous for the Denver Broncos to do so because they're trying to get Marvin Mims on the field. And I think they're not trying to lose value in any of those players. So that way they can make a deal. So I'm almost to the point where with Derrick Henry, I think it's about 50-50. 50% chance he gets moved, 50% chance that he stays put. But with the Denver Broncos, I would lean more towards 70-30, 60-40, that one of those two receivers does get moved before the trade deadline. So I'm really curious to see how that all plays off. The Equinox FF says, hey, Price, I'm here for building advice. I'm all about it. Let's get your permits. Let's get it all going, baby. What do you do if you have vets like Aaron Rodgers, Allen Robinson, and it's in a max points 4? Should I drop him to keep my points low or see if I can get a third? So far, nothing. Yeah, a guy like that at this point, whatever I can get. Now, I don't know how many picks your league does for their rookie drafts, but I'll take a 4th. I'll take a 5th. I'll take whatever. But I'm at the point now where we have to be realistic with some of these guys. Does a player like Allen Robinson likely ever see my lineup in a situation where I'm contending? If the answer is no, where you don't see a realistic scenario where he's in your lineup as a contending team, then there's no business. He has no business being on your roster, especially in one where the draft order is determined by max points. So you're absolutely on the right track, wondering what to do with him. Yes, a player like that, I'm cutting. I would much rather just pick up an injured player and put them in your IR, so you know that they're not getting any points for you at this point. So yep, there we go. Drop, done and done. And honestly, I like to look at my rosters in those kind of leagues and say, okay, what players realistically are ever going to be in my lineup on a championship style roster? And sometimes we have to like really give ourselves a good look in the eye and just feel like, is he really ever going to play? And now there's some guys you're like, maybe he's not a starter, but he's a really good bye week option, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. That's fine. But most importantly, you want to get the best possible pick you can get, especially in a super flex league this year. There's some good quarterbacks at the tippy top. You've got Marvin Harrison, who obviously looks like the second coming of Justin Jefferson. So, yes, at this point, I would be willing to just cut him, drop him like you did. But I'm evaluating my entire roster and looking at who are the guys that are scoring points for me that I don't want. Either cut them or put them on the block for 3rd, 4th, 5th, whatever you can get. Because at this point, any draft pick is more valuable than a guy that's going to score you points that isn't going to help contribute to a championship run. So great question there. Something that isn't talked about enough. So I'm glad you asked that question. It looks like my guy Peter is here a little bit early. So let's bring him on. Peter, how you doing, my man?
I was on mute. I'm doing great.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there you are.
Oh, man. Yep. Sorry, I was on mute. I'm doing awesome. You look so tan. You look great.
I feel like I didn't get that much of a tan because it was sort of cloudy there. for most part while we were there. There was only like one day that was really sunny. For the rest of the time, it was actually pretty cloudy. So I'm glad to see that you say I got some sun, because I wasn't sure I did.
Yeah, no, you look great. You look awesome.
Look at this. Such an encouraging guy. How was so you were telling me before that you volunteer in your church's youth group on Wednesdays typically. So Wednesdays you're going from thing to thing, bada bing, bada boom.
Thing to thing. Because I also have to get out the Twitter post about this. So I'm and then I was like, oh no, wait, I'm actually supposed to be talking about stuff tonight. So I have to figure that out. And so it's just a tizzy. As
you're a busy man. You're busy. You're involved in a lot of different stuff.
Yep. That's how I like it.
Yeah. You're coaching flag football this year, right? Or was it tackle?
Oh man. So yeah, it's flag. We were the 1 seed, undefeated 1 seed, which I don't want to sound braggy, but it's not new.
I mean, that's pretty dope.
We're pretty cool. And we lost to the bottom seed in the playoffs. So that was an upset.
Way.
Yep. This year in the playoffs, the 8, 7, 6, and 5th seed advanced. All of the top seeds got it, and it never happens like that.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
So was there did you have a major injury, or did the other team have a guy that came back?
We lost the main kid. Yeah, and I think they had a couple kids that were out for a lot of the season, but it was crazy. Not expected.
That is pretty nuts. Was it close at least?
It was 2-score game. It was like 16-30 or something. So it wasn't great.
It's tough.
But
that's tough.
We had a couple dropped picks though, so it could have been a lot closer. But
sure,
that's how it goes.
That is how it goes sometime. All right, Peter, how have you been enjoying the NFL season so far? I don't know. Have we talked since the season actually started, or was it only preseason?
That's a great question. We talked week 1 when I said I was wrong about Zay Flowers.
That's right. Okay.
Who knows? Maybe I wasn't. No, I think I was.
He's looked pretty good so far.
He's looked great.
So
week 1 was the last time we talked, although me and Dennis talked last week.
Yeah, how'd that go?
Oh, it was a pleasure. It's always fun to talk to Dennis.
Yeah, he's a great dude. Great dude. Always look forward to talking to him.
Very anti-young tight end, though.
Yes.
He's very anti that.
Yes, and he's very pro big wide receiver.
Yep. Which is ironic because they're kind of the same thing.
That is. It is basically just a bigger wide receiver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Heavy T says Dennis needs to get on the Laporta hype train. It's taken off and it's looking pretty good. But all right, let's get into what we're actually talking about tonight.
I love it.
Peter, I brought you on. We talked a little bit ago about guys in rebuild that we want to potentially get. Now, to preface all of this conversation, obviously in rebuild, one of the main things you're looking to acquire is you're looking to acquire draft assets. This time of year, I do like to touch on this because I think it's really important. Gauging the time of year as to when you're trying to acquire picks, when you're trying to acquire vets. Right now, yes, you're probably in a spot as a contending team that you might need to add a piece or two, but it's the most expensive time to buy a veteran player. Where on the flip side, this is the cheapest you are going to get a 2024 first round pick. Because what happens, and I'm guilty of this as well, where I get really short-sighted and I say, I gotta win a ship. It's been 3 years in this league and I haven't won a ship yet. And, I've come so close and blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden I just ship out my 24 first, my 25 first, and my 26 first. And, I'm acquiring Keenan Allen and I'm acquiring all these guys. And yeah, I have no problem doing that. But this is the toughest time, the most expensive time to acquire veteran, but the best time and the easiest time to acquire draft capital. So for rebuilding teams or even just middle of the road teams where you're like, I don't know if this is my year or not. Maybe I'll sneak into the playoffs, but I'm not really holding my breath that I would be able to topple a few of these top tier teams. well, maybe you look at acquiring draft picks for some of those older veteran players or even guys in their prime. Have you noticed this to be true in your leagues as well?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's trade deadline is so different.
Right.
But usually the closer you get, and it becomes really defined, right? Because we can all really lie to ourselves. And I mean, we're actually in the league together that I think that this happened. Is I
Yeah.
have Christian McCaffrey, and I'm like, okay, Christian McCaffrey,
He
I
can
have
cover a lot of
him,
wrongs.
but David Montgomery got hurt, and Craig Reynolds is who we all thought he was, and all of a sudden my RB2 slot is like, oh, Jerk McKinnon, that's great.
Yeah.
That's not a contender though. So
Right.
teams like that, it kind of hits you in the face that, hey, better luck next year.
Yeah.
But you need to make moves for next year. So I have a couple teams like that. By the way, if you wanted to trade for Christian McCaffrey in that league, I would be more than open.
We
for
can
that.
we can talk after
Yeah.
we can talk, or you know what? We could even try to make a trade live on the air.
Yeah. I'll pull up your team right now.
All right. We can always do that. I'm always with any. I like to try to stay on script as much as possible, but I always give an allowance for when you're on, and
Yep.
it's just no holds barred. We're gonna talk
Nope.
about whatever happens.
Whatever you want.
Yeah. You have a special allowance that no one else has.
This latest episode of Dynasty Nerds, by the way, totally off. It was totally off the rails. I loved it.
You could see why they need me, right?
Yep, they need you.
They're all over the place without. I don't normally listen, but I did. Look at Dennis Bennett here. When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's Laporta.
Okay, I'll one trade right here. Okay, you're
All right.
you're the 5th seed right now. You need Christian McCaffrey so bad. Garrett Wilson.
I don't know that I need him. I actually have very good running backs, but continue.
Garrett Wilson, straight up.
Who?
Garrett Wilson.
Oh, Garrett Wilson. Ooh, I can't do that.
Okay.
I love Garrett Wilson.
We'll figure it out. Yeah, you do have awesome running backs. It's going to be. I'll wait until Mostert gets injured.
That's the tricky part. My running backs are really good. Not that I couldn't flex Christian McCaffrey or flex somebody else.
That'd be pretty nice.
The piece I want, and Matt is being very stubborn, even though I feel like I've offered him a really good deal. I really want Travis Kelce. I want to upgrade my tight end because I have Dallas Goedert. But the problem is he's not budging. So I offered him. The only first I have is a 26 first.
Yeah.
And I offered him Dallas Goedert and a first for Travis Kelce on a team where he's rebuilding. I don't think he's won a game if he has not been many. Right. That's a good offer, right?
That's a great offer.
That's what I thought.
2026 though.
And that's the part that he's really struggling with. He's like, the pick's so far away. And I'm like, yeah, but you have no chance of competing and you have a guy that could retire at any point.
If I were you, I would try to offer someone that's not a tight end though, because he has Hawkinson too. He doesn't.
He loves tight ends. He's a tight end hoarder.
Okay.
It was kind of like you guys in that all-time draft. That's what
Hey,
what like.
Guess who won though? This guy.
Won what?
By a landslide. I won that all-time draft by a landslide. Don't you remember?
Didn't you get first pick?
No, I got 3rd pick.
Oh, you got 3rd pick?
I picked Tom Brady.
Yeah. I don't know how who determined who wins.
It was a Twitter poll.
Oh, okay. I was like, did they all get out there on the field and play? Is that what inspired that Pepsi commercial?
Yeah, actually.
That makes sense.
That's a good point. That was before the Pepsi commercial.
That's right. We inspired them.
Yeah.
Man, good on us.
Anyway.
All right.
We have a topic to talk about.
We were supposed to, but we probably should. All right. So players that we want to target. So we already talked about picks are obviously one of the most appealing things for a rebuild team at this point. Yeah. But if you're looking at players, which you should also be looking at players, you should not be looking at only picks because realistically, even if you have 10 first-round picks. First of all, bravo, that's amazing. But second of all, there's nothing that says you have to use all of those picks. You can
Correct.
easily trade some of those guys for players. And when we're talking about this life cycle, you wait till the draft when the picks are the most valuable thing and veteran players are low, and then you move some of those picks for actual players that have produced. So that's when you kind of ebb and flow with those types of things. But all that being said, let's talk about some players that we want to target if we are a rebuilding team. So let's look at from the super flex perspective, because obviously that makes quarterbacks valuable once again, because otherwise quarterbacks really aren't that valuable in one QB setting. So let's look at it through that lens. Peter, give us your first one, the first player that you want to look at in a rebuild.
Okay, so this is like the most anti-rebuild player, and I sent him to you. But here's the thing.
I saw this one. I was a little surprised, but I'm sure you have good reasoning.
When you are rebuilding, you either want young players or players that will go up in value later on.
Correct.
And this is the latter in this scenario, and it's Aaron Rodgers. So his injury recovery somehow is going great. There's been murmurs of him week 15. He could come back week 15, which, I mean, he wins comeback player of the year there then, right? Can you win?
Possibly if they make the playoffs.
Yeah. So
they might.
First off, he could even come back. I was looking at a lot of trade offers in our trade analyzer app, and I was seeing him go for 2025 second. I saw one trade that was Matthew Stafford for Aaron Rodgers and a second.
Okay.
So pretty much he was a throw into a second. So the goal in this scenario is either one, you don't want to rebuild for a long time, right?
Correct.
Your goal is a rebuild 1 to 2 years. So you take Aaron Rodgers. If he plays this year, that's already return on value. But I'm assuming you don't have your trade deadlines already done before then, so you can't flip them then. But next year, you either have a quarterback on a great Jets team. Correct me if I'm wrong. If he's on the Jets right now, they would be the best team in the NFL right now.
They would definitely be up there. I mean, best team's a little bit lofty with the Chiefs and the Eagles, some of the teams that are really good, but they're definitely in that conversation.
Yeah, definitely. So, and surrounded by a lot of good players. So if you can take a 2025, second round pick and turn that into a quarterback one, at least for a year, that's worth a first. A quarterback one for a year in a super flex league is worth a first. So you either get a quarterback that can start as your quarterback two, hopefully on your rebuilt roster next year or the year after, or you'll just be able to flip them for a higher value if you just sit on them for a little bit.
Yeah, it's an odd one, but I understand your reasoning, and I'm not against it. There are times in rebuild scenarios where you're not necessarily acquiring a player to start them. You're acquiring a player because you believe they're going to gain value and you can get a higher return later for that player. So I'm not against that move, as unorthodox as it may seem. I'm not against that move at all. And it's funny you mentioned him, because if you're going to go expensive, I want to get his number one wide receiver, Garrett Wilson. For the beginning of the year, everybody that I talked to had him either at wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 in Dynasty. Like almost everybody had him as a top 3 or 4 guy. I've been seeing people's rankings lately. He's been dropping to 6th, 7th, and it's because we're impatient. We are. We wanted all of this to happen this year, and it's just not quite come all together at this point. And look, are we disappointed? Sure. We wanted more from Garrett Wilson this year, but in his limited play, or in his limited quarterback play, he's actually performed pretty well for the most part. still scoring touchdowns, still making big plays. So I'm still all in on Garrett Wilson. I think the talent is absolutely there. We're still only in our second season with the kid. So he is still an absolute youngster that is only going to blossom and get better. And look at his game lines overall. 14.4, 16.3, 9.8. Okay, you don't love that one. 15, 8.4, and 17. So in 5 of the 6 games, you're pretty happy overall. Only one game that's a real stinker. You could debate the 9.8 either way, but still in the mid-teens for at least 4 of the 6. So for the quarterback play that he has, it's not too shabby.
Well, yeah, and it's also because it's not his lack of production is not because of his play.
Correct.
Situations in Dynasty change so much. I mean, you even saw it. I mean, there was 4 snaps into the Jets opening season, and his season totally changed. Right. I love that because he shows consistently that he is a top 3, top 4 talent at the wide receiver position in the NFL. And yeah, Rodgers will be back sooner rather than later, maybe. Who knows? Hopefully. But and if Rodgers comes back from this, I think it will be 2 years of Aaron Rodgers, and hopefully there's another fix there. But they just need. I mean, there are so many people happy that Mike White was starting last year.
Yeah,
and Wilson looked good then. You know, he put up numbers back then. So it's not like you don't even need a Kirk Cousins. You just need a semi-competent quarterback that can throw it his way. So I love it.
Yep, a Baker Mayfield would be totally fine right now.
Do you think so?
I mean, he's keeping Mike Evans afloat.
Yep, and yeah, I like it. So my next guy is a past Jets wide receiver, and that is Elijah Moore.
Ooh.
How old, if you were to guess right now, how old is Elijah Moore?
Guessing 25?
23.
23. Wow.
Isn't that crazy? He's
crazy.
Already been in the league.
Yeah, because this is year 3.
Year 3.
I thought he was a senior when he came out. He was a junior?
Yeah. I guess so. I need to look that up, but it says 23. Wow, and I believe that. Isn't that crazy? And so you're getting a wide receiver who has had spurts of productivity, but also has been on 2 of the most just the weirdest offenses in the league. You know, you got Deshaun Watson with, is he hurt? Is he not? Okay, It's PJ Walker time. And then you got Sam Darnold. He played with Sam Darnold, right? Was that what last season?
Yeah,
Sam Darnold was. Yeah, so he played with Darnold, and then the Zach Wilson year of he just didn't get the ball. So a lot of weirdness with that. But even this year, he has had. There's only one game that he didn't receive at least 7 targets in. They're working on getting him active in the offense. He's not putting up great points right now, and he's going. We did a startup draft recently, and he was going in like the 12th round. 11th, 12th round. But you know, the ceiling for that, and for him, I mean, 2 years from now, he could easily be the wide receiver 1 on hopefully a Deshaun Watson led team. That's good. I don't know, but I think right now you're able to kind of he got some hype when he went to the Browns,
right?
And now it's like, okay, he's not producing. What are we doing here? But
what are you willing to pay for Elijah Moore? Because I think that's the thing for me is like, what's the cost? Because I get buying low on him, but it's not been good. So what would you be willing to pay?
Well, let's look. I can pull up this draft really fast, but first off, I would probably be willing to pay at least the late second, right? Okay. But I don't think that's
done.
That's the thing is it's probably going to be having to be around a. Would you rather have him or Jonathan Mingo?
probably him, but it's
Yeah.
close.
So
It's close.
he went back to back with Mingo. Sutton went in front of him.
Okay.
Would you rather
He's
have
been
him or
productive
Sutton?
this year, but yeah.
I would rather have Moore over Sutton, over Mims, over Gabe Davis.
I would not want him over Mims. I would rather have
You would
Mims.
not. You would rather have Mims. Okay.
Yeah.
Gabe Davis. You would rather have Moore. I'm assuming.
I'm not a big Gabe Davis guy, but Davis feels like the right answer.
Okay. Tony.
Yeah.
Give me anyone else other than Josh Downs.
I'd rather have Josh Downs.
I would rather have Downs, and I think that's kind of where it ends for me.
Okay.
So I would rather have Downs, but if I can get, Delvin Cook went in front of him, Kendry Miller went in front of him. Would you rather have him?
Here's some trades that recently happened.
Yeah.
You want to hear a couple of these?
Yeah.
All right, Elijah Moore or Michael Thomas.
I'll give me Moore.
I think that's a rebuild versus contender for me. It would depend on where I'm at.
Even if I'm contending, I think I'd rather have Moore.
Really? You might be higher on than I am.
I think production wise, what's Thomas right now? What's his ranking?
I can look and see. Michael Thomas is he's wide receiver 36. He hasn't had any huge games, but he also hasn't had any duds. In a PPR league, he's been like really steady wide receiver 3. 11.1, 12.5, 11, 9.3, 10.5, 9.5, 13.2. So he's had like no bad games, but he also hasn't had any blow up games.
And so, for me, I would rather have Moore because he at least has a ceiling. And he's been putting up 9, 7, 11 points, and then 2, 6, 9. Like, neither of them are going to be my wide receiver 3 if I'm contending, right? They're going to kind of be
he might be your wide receiver 3 or flex, depending on your team. Yeah. If you're a Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler at running back, and those types of teams, he might be. So for a contender, I want somebody steady that if I have to put him in during the playoffs, I know that I can get double digits from them. Like that's so I think I would rather Thomas in a contender, but I'm with you in a rebuild. And that's the conversation we're having is in a rebuild situation, who would you rather have? So I think that makes sense.
And one more player, would you rather have him or Michael Wilson?
I'd rather Michael Wilson. I'm a Michael Wilson fan.
I love Michael Wilson, man. It's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's go to my next guy. And if you've listened to me at all since the beginning of the 2023 draft cycle, this will come as absolutely zero surprise. But he is still gettable. He's still gettable at this point.
I can't keep making shorts of this player.
What's that?
Keep making shorts of this specific player every week of you saying, buy this guy.
And look.
Is this the week?
Here's the thing. I'll be honest. All right. So if you haven't picked up on it, it's Tyjae Spears. But Cole Kmet, that is a good guess, Dan. That is a good guess. Without Justin Fields, though, I can't do Cole Kmet without Justin Fields. The two are like peanut butter and jelly. One by themselves. Well, I guess I like both of them still by themselves. But you get the point. All right. Tyjae Spears, he's looked incredible. I mean, literally, when you look at all of the advanced metrics, everything's pointing to him being a potential superstar type running back. First in all these types of categories. Here's the only issue is the amount of total touches. And it's because Derrick Henry is still there. If Derrick Henry gets moved, which does feel like a real possibility, for me right now, I would say it seems about 50-50. I think it's going to be tough for them to move him because, one, he's the icon of the team. And two, running backs just aren't valued very highly. So how much are you going to get for a 29, 30-year-old running back, whatever he is,
and
in 1 year? He's only got 1 year in his contract.
Can you think of another running back that is more scheme dependent than Derrick Henry? I don't know. That's the hard thing is I feel like he has to have a perfect fit.
I get what you're saying. I do think he would be totally fine though. I don't think he would be as optimal, but I think he would
Okay.
be totally fine in Buffalo, and I think he would be totally fine in Baltimore. I think those two places, I think he would do just fine with the RPOs, and they have some big hog mollies up front that, and I think Buffalo specifically, they got to be tired of ramming Justin or Josh
Latavius
Allen.
Murray. Oh
Well,
yeah,
yes, they got to be tired of him, but
yeah.
they don't want to be using their multi-million-dollar quarterback as a battering ram at the goal line. Like you want somebody to do that. Derrick Henry is obviously one of the best at that. So if Derrick Henry gets traded, you can't get Tyjae Spears anymore. Like you just can't.
No.
But when we're looking at a player that regularly is ripping off huge plays, regularly doing all of the right, like he will be their running back of the future. This team is headed toward a massive rebuild. He is going to be their guy for the immediate future. So I am more than willing to pay a first round pick, a late first in 2024 to get this guy. And I think in most cases it might get it done. Not for much longer, but I think for now it might get it done still.
So scenario. Buzz, my phone goes off just now. Whoa. Notification. Derrick Henry got traded to the Falcons. Because that's ironically, I think that's probably where he'll end up.
Oh my God. How terrible would that be?
It would just be such an Arthur Smith move of I do not care about your fantasy football team.
Yes.
It's just another he would just look at the camera and like, I do not care about your fantasy football team. But so that happens, right?
Right.
Someone offers you, let's just, I'll give you the pick number and it'll be that no matter what.
Okay.
108 and 110. Are you trading Spears away for that?
So I'm getting 2 firsts.
Mid to back end. But Derrick Henry just got traded.
Once Derrick Henry is traded, no, I don't think I would do it.
Okay, so he's worth so it would be an easy one for you if it was one of those was 104?
I would give him up for a high first round pick and a late first round pick. I would. Okay. And honestly, depending on how this class shakes out and where we're at in the process, I might be willing to give him up straight up for 104. Because if I think Drake May is going to be there, or I think an elite quarterback is going to be there, I'll give him up for an elite quarterback. I just think by the time we get into the 107s, 108s, 109s, most of the quarterbacks, if not all of the quarterbacks that have any real value, will be gone. And I don't love this class at the running back position. So it's the wide receivers at that point. So it would be kind of team dependent on what I would need as far as a trade goes there. But yeah, I would want Spears unless it's, a top end first.
Henry going to the Falcons would make Heavy T cry.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
That would be the funniest offense of all time.
They might as well not even have a quarterback. Just put Derrick Henry in at quarterback, Bijan Robinson in at running back. Actually, put Cordero Patterson in at quarterback, and then you can run like the wing T with Henry and.
Would Derrick Henry just be your fullback?
Mike Allstott version. Yes.
Yeah. He would get 20 touchdowns and went like 20 yards.
Yes. He would just truck people all day, whether he had the ball or not. So funny.
Love it.
So funny. But yeah, I'm seeing a lot of Spears for a first. It's gotten to that point now. Here's an interesting one. Spears and a fourth for Nico Collins. Who would you rather have there?
I'm going Spears because I love Nico, but I don't think he'll be this elite dynasty asset. I think Spears could be for 2 to 3 years. It's almost like it matters what your strengths are, right? If you need a running back, I'd almost go with Spears. If I need a wide receiver, I'd almost go with Collins.
I think that's fair. I think that's
fair.
Super
close. I like that.
When I draft, I'm drafting for value first. But when I trade, I'm willing to, give a little bit here, take a little bit there, depending on need. So that's how I operate typically. We have Marcus saying, I traded a mid 25 first for Spears. Love it. Dan Edwards said, are there any 24 class running backs that are standing out at the moment? I don't know that any of them have done like incredible. Ward from Florida State's looked pretty decent.
Yeah.
We were really in on Travion Henderson and Rocket Sanders. Neither one of those guys were huge. Marcus, like, you told me to make that trade. No wonder I love it. Neither one of those guys have really performed to the level that you were expecting them to this year. So they've lost a little bit of their luster there. It's not looking incredible at the running back position. The rest of the positions look really good in this draft, but the running back is definitely the one position that's lacking. And guys will come out of the woodwork, and I'm sure there'll be somebody that I fall in love with. It'll be tough to match the Spears Javonte level of hype.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's somebody I'll end up falling in love with.
Could I ask you a question?
Yes, you can.
Cade Stover.
Okay.
On Ohio State.
Uh-huh.
Does he have, like, I've been cutting up a lot of his film.
Uh-huh.
And I've fallen in love with him. He's awesome. He's just your football type of guy. Gets lured.
They call him Farmer Gronk.
Really?
Farmer Gronk is what they call him.
Oh, man. It fits.
It does.
Do you think where do you think he gets drafted?
He is not going to have the elite athletic profile that you're going to want typically out of a tight end. Yeah. However, he is a guy that makes plays. He always seems to get open. He always seems to make plays. He's great in contested catch situations. So he strikes me as this kind of guy that'll go like late third, early fourth, like fringe day 2, day 3 type of guy that I don't know if he's ever going to be able to be like a huge NFL player, but he's a guy that you root for because, man, he always seems to find a way to make it play.
Hard. I love it because when I'm cutting up film, I'm not scouting.
Right.
Like I'm not doing scores or anything.
Sure.
But he just pops on film and I'm like, man, that guy, he just got 2 touchdowns. Yeah. And I think he could be like a Kyle Rudolph type of a tight end. You know, like he has 1 year that he has like 14 touchdowns and everyone's like, wait, who's this guy? But yeah, I agree. But I was like, oh, is this going to be the new Jeremy Ruckert? Or I don't know. But I love watching him play. Anyway.
Yeah, he's fun, and he always seems to come up clutch in big situations. Yeah. Always there to make that play. He's been a really steady, solid performer. All right, we've only got a little bit more time here. Peter, why don't you give me at least one more guy that you're going after in rebuild situations?
I am going for Chris Godwin.
Ooh.
Now this cat, he looked that people call people cats, right?
They did. I don't know if that's still a thing or not, but maybe. I'm not the hippest person in the world, so I don't know, but
okay. He's been fine, right? A couple 10-point games. He had a 19-point game. He's 27. This is Mike Evans last year as a Buck. Correct? Like true or false? This is true,
that
right?
Seems like it's the case, yes.
Yeah. So, and he's someone that I feel like his value has dipped for some people, but for contending teams, you're not interested in starting them right now. And if I could trade him, oh boy, would you trade him for for Keenan Allen if you're rebuilding?
Would I trade him for Keenan Allen if I'm rebuilding? Yeah, I would rather have Godwin in a rebuild.
Yeah.
Because you got another 4 years on him. So
yeah. And I think that there's a couple players like an Allen that they will be a higher scorer this year, but next 3 years, what you're saying is Godwin's going to be the more valuable player. So just take advantage of that depth. He still looks great. Baker Mayfield's just not able to have 2 top 20 wide receivers, and that's fine. That's not
Yeah.
what we need right now because you're rebuilding. So I try to take advantage of that value and just try to almost do like a lateral trade in value, but just get younger.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think that's a good move. He is somebody that I would look at, and you're right. He's another one that isn't a traditional rebuild get, and it might be hard to pry him from a contender, but if you're able to, I think he is somebody that I would be interested in acquiring in that type of scenario, because I do think better days are ahead down the line. So I like it. That's a good call. All right, my last one real quick. It's somebody that he has had a couple weird weeks here and there, but overall he's been a really solid producer. And I think he's not viewed as the top receiver on his team, but I think he is the top receiver on his team. That's Romeo Doubs from the Green Bay Packers. Right now, we're looking at, he had week 1, 18.6, then down a little bit at 5 points. Then the next 2 weeks, 18.3 and 18.5, then down to 1.4. They had their bye week, and then he had 11 points this week. So 4 of the 6 games, you've been really happy with his production. And I think everyone is kind of waiting for that Christian Watson breakout. And yes, maybe it'll end up being a 1A, 1B type thing, but Jordan Love seems a lot more comfortable with Romeo Doubs' game than he does with Christian Watson. Now, maybe that's because of the injury that Watson's been dealing with. I don't know. But he is kind of an overlooked piece right now. And if I could sneak in there and have him be the cherry on top of a deal where I'm like, it's close, give me Romeo Doubs and we'll call it even. Or, can I sneak in a mid to late second and get him, or maybe even an early second? I would be willing to give any second for Romeo Doubs. I don't know that I'm quite at the point where I'd be able to give a first, but I'd be willing to give any second for Romeo Doubs in 2024. So he's a guy that I like quite a bit. I think is still flying under the radar because most people believe he's the wide receiver 2, not the wide receiver 1. But I really like him long term.
Would you say? Would you rather have Dobbs or Traylon Burks? This showed up in our trade browser. You would.
I'd rather have Dobbs. Yeah,
would that change if they traded Hopkins?
I don't think so. I know, obviously Traylon was the higher draft selection, but everything he's done so far just screams mid. Like, he just doesn't seem like
he
a guy.
Needs to go up against Jair Alexander more.
Yeah, right.
That'll help him
refine his game a little bit. He's just another one of those guys that didn't have incredible ball skills, but just a really good athlete. He's like Quentin Johnston in that sense. Guys that are really good athletes, but just don't have the ball skills that you need to, I think, be an elite receiver in this game.
But would you say, so if you're, and this just popped into my head, but if you are a big wide receiver who's a good athlete or a very good athlete, is that enough? Because you've seen a very small amount of bigger wide receivers that are kind of unrefined like that, like a DK Metcalf.
I was gonna say, I think DK is the only one that I can realistically point to that I thought did not have very good ball skills and was still able to succeed because of his elite athleticism.
Because he's on a whole nother level as those guys.
It's true. I don't know that I can think of anybody else. So I'm at least not in recent memory. Maybe there's some guys back in the early 2000s or the 90s or something like that.
Yeah.
But in the last decade and a half, I can't think of anybody that was a really good producer simply just on athleticism. 99 times out of 100, give me the guys that are really good route runners and the guys that are really good, that have really good ball skills. Guys like Keenan Allen, like, dude ran a 4.7 as a rookie. What do you think he's running now? He's probably running a 4.9.
Hey, Jake Bobo ran a 4.9, making looking like a star out there,
making huge catches. Great footwork there. So I think that's the thing for me is there are some rare examples of that, but you look at all of the best receivers in the NFL for the most part, and what do they all have in common? Good route running and really good hands, with the exception of Tyreek Hill. He's just on another level of fast. So you have like that end of the spectrum for Tyreek Hill, and then the opposite end of the spectrum with DK Metcalf. But then almost everyone else, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, like all of the main guys, Garrett Wilson, like all of these guys were really, really good ball skills. And for the most part, also good route runners, but specifically the ball skills is the thing that I think of.
And like I would say AJ Brown's kind of on that elite physical, but he has super good ball skills too.
He was a really good route runner coming out too.
Yeah. Devonta Smith is the poster boy for you don't really need size. And so I think it is something that we might need to shift our mind with just if he's very good physically and he's a big guy, that's still not good enough. So I remember at the combine when Quentin Johnston ran that, and even Burks, I remember when he ran, and I was like, oh man, that's kind of slower than I was thinking. And like a lot of people are like, okay, chill out, it's fine. But I think the combine might really matter with that kind of body type.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've hit on all the guys we need to talk about. Talked about quite a few other things as well, Peter. Always a joy having you on. Remind the folks where they can find you and anything you're working on.
Yeah, you can find me at Pete Bartausky on Twitter. It's right there. And also to find me on anything Dynasty Nerds social media as the guy who posts Garrett and the other beautiful people over there. And yeah, that's about it. I post a lot of mocks even during the season, so we can get a good value check on all the players, see where Puka goes every mock draft. It's totally different.
Where's he going right now?
I did a rookie redraft today, and he went 105.
Okay.
In Superflex. Jordan Addison went in front of him, and then it was Robinson, Richardson, Stroud, Addison, Puka.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah, there we go.
Awesome. Sweet. All right. Well, thank you, sir.
So much, Garrett. Yep.
Absolutely. We'll see you.
See ya.
All right, guys, let's go to a quick break. When we come back, let's answer some of those fantasy questions, those trade questions. We'll get all of that done, and then we'll have my man, Dennis Bennett, joining us at around 10:15. We'll see you in a moment.
From the Hometown Hero series, Zach Parise.
That is a very nice card, and that's one I'm probably going to have to organize a little trade ski with you, because I would actually like that card.
You got downtown Newark in the background. I mean, Newark has never looked so good.
No, it is not.
We'll put that back up on the screen. I just want to have a penny sleeve ready, and yes, we can absolutely work out a little trade ski for that, because that belongs in a Devil fans collection right there.
I'll trade you the Braden Schneider rookie card for it.
Done.
There we go. The first card for card trade on Rip and Rip history. And it was that easy. It
was that easy. That's because, you know what? Because neither one of us are jerks. And it's the same thing when we try and do fantasy trades. Like, we don't try and screw each other. We have conversations. If there's a fit, there's a fit. If it's not, it's not. We don't try and, take the other one over the barrel. So there you go. In a penny sleeve. Hometown hero, Zach Parise. He was among the league's most productive goal scorers in 06-07 and followed up with a terrific regular season with an even more impressive postseason. And then they talk about what he did in the first round series against Tampa Bay that year. So that's off to the side for you.
That's true. And, if this is it for his career, he had a hell of a career.
He did.
Hopefully he comes back one more year with the Islanders, but if he doesn't, hell of a run.
Welcome back, Dynasty Nerds, Better Sports Network. We are back. If you notice, I had a little wardrobe change at break. I am, for whatever reason, my office, it gets crazy hot in here. And the rest of my house isn't necessarily that way. I don't know if I don't get like good ventilation in here or what, but it always gets stupid hot. I have my door closed so my daughters don't hear everything and stay awake and whatnot. And man, I was burning up. So a little wardrobe change during the break there. But let's get into some trades. So trades that you've already made, trades you're looking at making, anything like that. Lay them out there. We can even do some start sits this week if you want to. Anything that you want for roughly the next 15 to 20 minutes until we get my guy Dennis Bennett on here. Also, almost forgot to remind you guys, Fantasy Alarm. That the all-pro guide. Head over there, fantasyalarm.com. Head over there. Their all-pro subscription. It's a thing of beauty. All-pro subscription at fantasyalarm.com. Yeah. So while you guys get your trades organized, get your trades in here, we were discussing guys that could potentially be on the move at the real NFL trade deadline. Marcus, you said, isn't Chase Claypool just a big, fast guy? Yes, he was kind of the poster child. Remember the Calvin Johnson comps? They're calling him Mapletron instead of Megatron, and those are looking rather silly right now. Ooh, I'm watching. I also have my Cavaliers on, my Cleveland Cavaliers on, while we're doing this, and they just tied it up 40 seconds to go. So NBA underway, NHL underway. It is a very fun time of year, but make no mistake, this is fantasy football time. This is NFL time. That's what we're doing. So other guys that could potentially be on the trade block. For a while, it was rumored that we could potentially have a Kirk Cousins trade. Well, after that big W that they secured over the San Francisco 49ers, all of a sudden, singing a little bit of a different tune. Does not look like he's going to be dealt. They might make a little push, see if they are able to make the playoffs. So seems like he's going to be off the trade market. A guy like James Conner would normally be part of the equation along with Zach Ertz, but unfortunately with their injuries, doesn't look like they're going to be on the move. So no team's going to be able to acquire those guys either. We could see a deal for, maybe a smaller time running back. I think that's the one that strikes me as the more likely. Quarterback, very unlikely. Wide receiver, I think we could see it, but running back is the one that I think we could see some deals being made for. And I wonder if a guy like Chuba Hubbard, I don't think he would go somewhere to start, but maybe a backup like a Chuba Hubbard where he's kind of winding down years wise on his rookie deal. Believe this is year 3 for Chuba Hubbard. So wouldn't surprise me if maybe Carolina was open to, hey, we can get a 5th, 6th round pick for a guy like Chuba Hubbard. For a team that might just need a good backup. His speed would fit really well with Miami Dolphins. They seem to never be able to stay healthy. So, I think those are the types of deals that are the most likely. Yes, we could see Derrick Henry. Yes, we could see one of those Denver Bronco wide receivers. But I think those are the most likely deals. Some of those, ancillary pieces, backup running backs that are good players, solid players. Another one, Deonta Foreman. He has shown these past couple weeks that he's solid, but we're going to be getting Roshan Johnson back. We're going to be getting Khalil Herbert back, and that's going to more than likely put him back as to a guy that might not even be dressing some weeks. So could we see a team that needs a thumper or a solid backup? Maybe, he's another one that would be a fit potentially with like a Buffalo Bills type of team. Maybe they're looking for a thumper to go with Tony Pollard. Dallas Cowboys, another one that we had kind of mentioned a little bit earlier as a potential running back that could be on the move. We could see somebody potentially get traded to Cleveland. Kareem Hunt's played pretty well, but you never know there. So that's another team that could be on the trade market for a potential running back. Marcus said, I traded for Jay Jets at the start of the season, and I was excited to see Minnesota win that game. I need the Vikings to be in the playoff race for the fantasy postseason. Yes, you want the Vikings to be relevant. There needs to be motivation and reason for Justin Jefferson to expedite his work to get back healthy and to be able to play for your fantasy football playoffs. So we will have to wait and see. Oh, my guy Donovan Mitchell just hit a huge three-pointer to put the Cavs up 12 seconds to go. The guy is an absolute killer. Sorry, I know you guys don't care about the Cavs. I care about the Cavs. I am a Cleveland sports fan through and through, which is definitely not as glamorous as rooting for other cities, other franchises. But seeing my guys in Cleveland do big things is pretty nice. So another name that I'm interested. I don't know if I think he will get traded or if I just kind of want to see him get traded because I think he would be pretty fun in an offense that wants to use him creatively. Antonio Gibson. He's a guy that is in, I believe, the last year of his rookie deal as well. Yes, this is year 4 for him. So only half the season left. But there are teams that could use kind of that chess piece, that guy that you can just move all over the place, good receiving back. He would be really interesting on certain teams. The problem is I just can't think of a great fit for him, but he's somebody that I bet would be available if a team came calling. And let me look right now. I want to check out the standings and I'm going to run through them real quick and see, is there a team that could use a guy like an Antonio Gibson? Because I think he would be somebody that teams might go after. I don't think he fits with the Bills, and I don't think the Dolphins more than likely. Potentially the Dolphins, but I don't think so. Baltimore could potentially. I don't think anyone else there. Not the Jags. Maybe the Texans. They could use, a little bit more of a speed element in that offense. So I could potentially see the Texans if they kind of want to make a push. They're 3-3 right now, and their division is really wide open. So that could be an interesting one. A team that could potentially make a move to try to get him. They're not going to trade more than likely in the same division. So now we're looking at NFC North. I don't think anybody there. And then the South, maybe a Buccaneers team, but if they wanted to trade for a running back, it would probably be somebody that's more of a thumper, more so than Rashad White. So would be interesting to see all of that end up playing out. A guy like Antonio Gibson could be a good fit somewhere. I just don't know where. Once again, if you guys have any trade questions in your league, this is the time to get them in. I will get to any and all trade questions that I can. And, I think the past few weeks we've been bumping on Wednesday nights. This week, a little bit slower. I think the NFL, the NBA being on tonight might have a little bit of an impact on this because guys are wanting to see the start of the season, their team's first game of the year. So we might be missing some guys that are closet NBA fans that are also some fantasy football fans. So not as many trades to get to, but I'm sure next week when the excitement and the hype dies down for the NBA, I'm sure we will have a lot more people in here looking to ask about trades and things like that. Let's head over to the wide receiver position. Like I said, I don't anticipate any wide receivers being on the move to the extent that running backs would, but one that has been rumored. The problem is this team is still in it in their division. Mike Evans is one that doesn't sound like they were able to get a long-term deal done. I don't think they're going to. So at this point, Mike Evans is more than likely going to be on a different team in 2024. He would be a very, very intriguing piece on, a lot of teams. The Kansas City Chiefs are the one that always comes to mind for a team that could use a really good wide receiver. But I could see him potentially going to the Bills. I could see him potentially going to, the Steelers maybe could use a guy. We could see about maybe the Texans if they think that they're contenders. You could see about that. The Cowboys, I wouldn't rule them out at all. Maybe the Lions. I don't know. They just got Jamison Williams back, so I don't know. So Mike Evans is another one that could be a little bit interesting as a potential trade chip a guy that could go somewhere else. Another one, as I'm looking through here and scrolling through like names that could potentially be on the trade block, I Terry McLaurin just got a new deal, so I don't think he would. But Curtis Samuel's at the end of his contract, and he's had a surprisingly good season so far. Currently, Curtis Samuel is actually the wide receiver 30 on the season, so he's produced quite a bit. He's played pretty well. He would be an interesting name out there as a potential trade chip. Marcus says, I traded Burks and a second for Amari Cooper, going for it all. Had to do something after I lost Justin Jefferson. And look, I'm not the biggest Treylon Burks guy. And if you're a contender, Amari Cooper is a great contender piece. The tricky part is he hasn't been as consistent as we would like. And that really doesn't have a lot to do with him. That has a lot more to do with the quarterback play. If we can get consistent quarterback play in Cleveland, you're going to see some really good games out of Amari Cooper. So I'm totally good going for that. And assuming that second is yours, that's a late second. So I have no problem making that move. Michael Anthony said currently 5 and 2. Got it. Currently 5-2 in my one quarterback league. Fields is banged up and Richardson is done for the season. And Ritter was my last option. So I traded Gus Edwards, a 24 fourth and a 25 fourth for Jared Goff. I think that's a fantastic deal. I get that it's a one quarterback league and quarterbacks aren't really valued nearly as high as they are in super flex leagues, but I think that's a move that makes perfect sense. It's low cost to you. Gus Edwards, somebody that might even be replaced at the deadline, depending on if Baltimore decides to make a move for a running back. So he might even be moving on. Fourths are, I mean, you can light them on fire. They're very, very rarely ever are you going to hit on somebody in the 4th round to get a need on a contending team. So I think that's a perfect contender move to make. Chaka says, do you think Thielen can sustain his value the rest of the season? If the Panthers decide to trade for a Sutton Judy type, how much does that take a hit to his value? It would take a decent hit. The thing that he has going for him right now, more so than anything else, because he was never a fantastic athlete, but he's definitely not the athlete that he once was. All of that being said, he's really relying on that huge target share that he's been getting these past few weeks. So that's the biggest thing for Adam Thielen. But I mean, he's been unreal. He's been wide receiver 7 despite missing a game due to a bye week. That would actually, with the buys, he would move up to wide receiver 5. He would be the 5th ranked wide receiver if it were all things being equal. So very, very interesting player. But yes, that would definitely hurt his value. But as far as sustaining it all season, I don't see any reason why not. Maybe it takes a small dip if a guy like Jonathan Mingo finally starts to come on the second half of the year, and it's still early. He definitely could. Or if DJ Chark kind of emerges a little bit more. But yeah, at this point, I feel pretty good that he's going to be maybe not putting up, 31, 27, 28, but that 15 to 19 point range, I think pretty good. Would you rather have Lamb rest of season and PPR? Oh, this feels like it should obviously be Lamb, but the fact that it's taking me a little bit shows that this is not as easy of a question as it should be. I'd rather have Lamb or Thielen rest of season. I'm still going to go with CeeDee Lamb. It's close. I'm surprised it's this hard for me. I would rather have CeeDee Lamb. We saw his last game, things starting to look a little bit better, and they've had a bye week, and Mike McCarthy traditionally is very good coming off his bye, does a great job getting his players prepared, but also we heard Aaron Rodgers talk about it. He gives his guys a lot of rest during that week off. So team guys are usually pretty well rested coming off the bye, able to do a lot. So yeah, I like CeeDee Lamb a hair more. But it's very close. It is very close. All right. Marcus says, should I give 2/3 for Adam Thielen? I'm a contender 2024 and 2025 thirds. I would. Thirds, I'm never going to let and Matt O'Hara says this all the time, but I'm never going to allow a third to make me not get a deal done. Like, that's never going to hold me back from getting a deal done. So if I can move thirds and get a guy that, at this point, he's averaging, what's he been averaging? Adam Thielen's been averaging 21.1 points per game. If I can get 20 point per game player for 2/3, even if it's simply just for this year, I think it's more than worth it. More than worth it. So, yep, I would absolutely do that in a dynasty league. All right, let's go ahead. Yeah, let's take our final break. And when we get back, you know who it is. It's Dennis Bennett time here on the Better Sports Network.
With that, I give you a eulogy from the Monday Night Rants Guillotine League.
I guess that's my cue to go. So,
What gave it away?
that real quick. Okay, so we are gathered here today to say goodbye to our friend Garret Price and his team known as Dynasty Price. You won't be building a dynasty in this Guillotine League, my friend, as you are gone about halfway through, and further prove the point that I may know more than half the people in this company. We say goodbye to such players as Brock, I might be ass, Purdy. Josh, I think I was a little too overhyped, Jacobs.
Mm-hmm.
Javonte, damn, Russell Wilson, my quarterback. Williams. Devontae, the other receiver in Philly Smith. Hollywood, that's not my real name, Brown.
Nothing Hollywood about it.
Kyle, I don't know why Arthur Smith hates me, Pitts. Austin Eckler, who I don't even have a nickname for because he's actually pretty good. Trevor, long-haired Lawrence. And Devon, I may be the secret to your future fantasy team success, Achan.
Mm-hmm.
May we say goodbye to all these players as they join the rest of us on the waiver wire.
Whoever's left.
And as far as Team Dynasty Price, you will end up with the same fate as our friend Adam Bernard did last week when his team bit the dust. You will both end up as Woody in this league. And by that I mean, we don't want to play with you anymore.
Oh my God, that's the most brutal one on the.
May you rest in peace, my friend. I'll see you for Dynasty Nerds on Wednesday.
That was pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, that was pretty good. I had not seen that up until this moment. I just saw it. But I mean, you're listing off all those players. I got Austin Eckler. I got Josh Jacobs. I got Devon Achan. Like, those guys are about to go to the waiver wire. People are going to be feasting. I got Pitts. I got Smith, Hollywood Brown. Man, it was a squad, Dennis. It was a squad. Trevor Lawrence, all these guys. Didn't happen for me.
That's just the way it falls sometimes. I mean, you do your best, you do research, you make informed decisions, and then we turn it over to the variables. And it is what it is.
They were not in my favor. It is what it is. I've moved on. But no, that was fun playing in that. It was, I've actually never done a Guillotine League before. This was my first time doing one of those. And so there is a high amount of variance and luck because you got to make sure that you don't have one bad week. You can have a bad week. You just can't have a really bad week. And especially week by week, that margin for error gets more and more narrow. So it was a fun league to play in. It definitely added a lot of chaos with all of the guys in the on the waiver wires, because once a team gets cut, all those guys go to the waiver wire, and then it's a feeding frenzy. So you had to be
And
very
you have to
judicious.
weigh, you have to weigh like how much fab do I spend?
Yeah.
'Cause if I blow it all now, could screw
Is it
me
gonna hurt me
later.
later? Yeah. Yep. If Devon Achane didn't get hurt, because I drafted him, he wasn't like a guy I picked up later. I drafted him. Had he stayed healthy, whew, y'all would have been hurting real bad. All right, Dennis, let's get into it. We talked with Peter about players that we want to acquire in rebuild situations. Now we're going to be talking about some guys that we want to acquire if we are contenders. Now, I talked about it earlier, but if you weren't there earlier, this is tough because acquiring veteran players at this time of year, up until your trade deadline, whenever it is, some people observe the actual trade deadline, which would be this Tuesday. They observe the NFL trade deadline. Most dynasty leagues have kind of moved on from that, and they've pushed it back. Some as late as the start of the playoffs. Some even in the playoffs, you can still make trades in playoffs, which I don't like that one. I don't like trading players in playoffs. You got to dance with the one that brought you. But I'm fine with, week 12, 13 trade deadline, something like that. Dennis, where's your ideal trade deadline week? And then what was the second part? Acquiring veteran players. Your thoughts on acquiring veteran players this time of year when they're the most expensive.
So I have several leagues that don't have trade deadlines.
Uh-huh.
And I love those.
What?
When you get, so if it's week 14, the playoffs have started, and you lose your star running back to an ACL, it's all right. They're going to come back from it, probably be good in 12 to 16 months. But like if you lost Nick Chubb in week 14, 15, and you could trade him for, the RB10 and the RB8 to continue your playoff run, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to be able to do that?
Here's why. Is because I believe in preparation. I believe in preparation H, but I also believe in being prepared for your playoffs. And so you make moves in advance to ensure that you don't have those types of issues. Now, you can't control the injuries, but you can control if you have somebody to bring in for that said running back.
So let's say a trade I did a couple weeks ago, and it was a terrible trade. I'm just putting it out there.
Okay.
I traded David Montgomery and Justin Jefferson to a person. Let's say that trade happened in week 12.
Okay.
They're thinking, I'm getting myself ready for the playoffs. And now they just lost two of their biggest scoring pieces.
Okay.
They should just not be able to try to rectify the situation.
During the playoffs? No. Before the playoffs? Absolutely. But during the playoffs, you got to make trades to ensure that you have the depth that you need. That's the difference between contenders and pretenders.
But Justin Jefferson you don't have a Justin Jefferson on your bench.
For sure. But you have somebody that is still a good player that you can put in.
Yeah, we'll put KJ Osborne in. Why not? That'll get us to the title.
No, I do not like trading within the playoffs because I've seen it happen before where a team is booty butt cheeks going into it and they just snuck in the 6th seed and all of a sudden they trade for CMC and Keenan Allen and all of these guys right at the trade deadline and they win a ship even though their team wasn't very good and the reason their team got there didn't win them the ship. It was these random guys that they got to add in week 17, 18. So I do not like doing it during the playoffs.
Were the trades even? Were they fair? Like they weren't trading a 5th round pick for Keenan Allen in week.
No. They gave up firsts and I don't remember what the exact deal was, to be honest. So maybe it was fair, maybe it wasn't. That's not the point. That was not the team. That is not the same team that made it to the playoffs.
It sounds like a runner-up talking there.
No, this sounds like somebody trying to make it fair to where you got to dance with the one that brought you. You can't just say, all right, I'm going to be like meh all year. And then I'll see if I win week 1. And then I'm going to cash it all. No, you got to make that decision in week 12. You got to make that decision in week 13. Are you a playoff team? Are you a contender, or are you not? I don't like getting to decide in the championship game. What happens? Okay, let's take it to the real NFL. What happens if last year Brock Purdy hurts his elbow, and let's say it happened before the game instead of during the game? Should they be able to trade and all of a sudden get who would have been available at that point? Not Jalen Hurts. I don't know. One of the best quarterbacks that's not in the playoffs. I can't think of it right now. But should they be able to trade for an elite quarterback that week right before the Super Bowl?
If the rules allow for it, why not?
But that's what I'm saying. I don't think you should have rules that allow for that. I hate those.
Like, what are they going to have to? So let's say they're going to trade for Dak Prescott.
Okay.
You know, a good quarterback, not great.
Kirk Cousins. That's a perfect one. He would fit their scheme great.
Yeah. You know, white Dak Prescott. So they're gonna have to give up a premium on top of what Cousins would normally be worth.
Sure.
Because it is the playoffs. You know, it's going to benefit the other team that trades away Cousins. And the other team has the ability, if they want to beef up their lineup too. It can get hot and heavy when everybody can trade, man. You only have 2 teams or 4 teams left competing, and they can see the dollar signs right there. You know,
not a fan. Not a fan.
It's all about that. It's all about them greenbacks, man.
Nah, I don't like it. But all of that being said, as far as veteran players up at your trade deadline, are you somebody that obviously sometimes you don't have much of a choice? You kind of have to bite the bullet and pay the expensive prices to get the veterans. But are you trying to avoid making those deadline deals, or are you willing to pay that premium once you kind of figure out if you're a contender or not?
If I think I have a legitimate chance to win money, not break even, third place money,
sure,
preferably not second place money. If I think I can, if I'm going to turn a profit, I'm going for it. I want to win. I'm willing to pay a premium, and because my general philosophy is in Dynasty that leagues come and go. You're going to leave some leagues. Sure. And there are leagues where I have traded away probably 8 of my next 2 years worth of draft picks. I'm staying in those leagues.
Right.
Those, like, I see people out there on Twitter all the time talking about, you know, when you're listening to an analyst, check their record. Let's be transparent. I'll be transparent. I have some bad dynasty teams. You know why? Because I went for it, and maybe it worked out and I won, but the next year I've got an old team. Now it's breaking down. I'm still I can get to the playoffs, maybe make something happen. But I'll keep those teams until I can get them reasonable assets to make them worth somebody wanting to take over. Because there's nothing worse than trading away all the draft picks for old players, you know, finishing second or third, and then, hey guys, I'm out of here. You know, I got too many leagues, so I'm cutting this one. I'm like, you know, you're an asshole. You know. Yeah,
if you do that and trade all your draft picks and then leave, that is and I've had people do that in leagues where I'm the commish. If I leave leagues, which I try really, really hard not to leave leagues, it's pretty rare. The only times that in the past few years that I've left a league is because I decided that I'm not an IDP guy. I don't enjoy IDP at all. And I also learned that I love Devi, but C2C is a lot to manage. So those are the only ones that I've cut over the past couple of years. But with that, I either pay for the next following year, so that way, you know, they're good to go, or I make sure that they have a ton of draft capital and ammo to make it their own team.
Yeah, that's the route I take. I mean, and I'll stay in leagues with people I'm like, I hardly know these people. You know, we're not really friends. I don't know if I even like them, but this team is shit and I can't leave it now.
Yeah, you feel bad. Yeah, I'd almost rather leave on top than leave when you're a terrible team. But all right, Dennis, let's get into our main conversation point today, and that's guys that we want to acquire as contenders. So, Dennis, who are some players that you have your eyeballs on that you're like, this is the kind of guy that I want to get on a contending team?
So when I looked at the quarterbacks, I didn't see any players that I felt were like a decent value for where they were during this season. So I didn't really do any quarterbacks.
Okay.
So moving on to running backs. And when to be fair, when I looked at the quarterbacks, I thought, oh, if this was 2 weeks ago, Kyler Murray probably would have been the guy.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not a Kyler Murray fan, because now it looks like he's coming back. The team may be 1-6 right now, or 1-5, 1-6. But if he comes back with Michael Wilson and Trey McBride, and they're getting James Conner back and Hollywood Brown, they could go on a run. They
absolutely could.
They have 3 division games left, and they're all at home. I mean, it kind of lines up. They could go on a run. I don't think they will, but they could.
Yeah.
So I kind of took a look at running backs, and I'll start with James Conner because I mentioned him. I think you can get him for probably a mid to early second round pick. And if I think I'm like really late in the first round, I might even go first if I think he's going to put me over the top. He's having a really good season. He's 2.31 yards before contact, is 4th in all running backs with 50 carries or more. So he's for as bad as quote unquote the Arizona line has been, they're opening up lanes for Conner. He's got an 8.8% explosive run rate. So he's getting through the line. He's picking up chunks. Will he be able to when he comes back off the injury? That's always something you have to worry about with Conner. He can get dinged up and lose some explosiveness. And he's getting 75% of the touches inside the 5 before he got injured. I know DeMarcado's looking decent, once they decided to let him carry the ball. And DeMarcado athletically profiles very nicely to Aaron Jones. He didn't catch the ball as much as Aaron Jones in college, but he can do it. And like in a blind athletic profile, I don't know that you'd be able to pick them apart. They're that close athletically.
Wow.
Looking at Kentley Platt's relative athletics score comparison tool, I was pretty amazed.
Huh.
Receiving, he's 30.6% route participation, so he's not getting a lot of the routes, but he is getting some. 0.717 targets per route run. It's fairly a mediocre number, and a 5.8% target share. That's not great. He gets some, and we saw in Pittsburgh that he is a reasonably good pass catcher, good at pass protection. So when they get Murray back, it may bode well for his production to increase in the running game or passing game, excuse me. And if I can get him for a mid to early second round pick to bolster my running game for a running back that, let's face it, doesn't really have a long shelf life. This may be his last hurrah. And if that gets me to a title, I'm okay to let him sunset on my roster.
Yeah, I think he's a great one, particularly because of the cost. For the most part, I think you're going to be able to get him for a second round pick. Hopefully you don't have to pay the first. I do think that's a little steep, but for a second round pick, a guy that's going to be getting that much volume, or at least that's what we expect. We expect him to get quite a bit of volume on a team that is going to try to be competitive at the very least. I think he's a great fit because a lot of guys in his range are not getting the projected volume that he's getting. And that's, I think, the real key for him is he's not sharing much. We'll see if DeMarcado is involved once he comes back. That'll be the interesting thing to kind of watch and see. But absolutely a contender piece that I like.
Yeah, the biggest red flag is really, does DeMarcado continue to take some market share?
Yeah.
Just
Which I'm
whether-
fine if he takes the receiving because he wasn't getting a ton anyway,
Right.
so it's not going to hurt him that much. It's if he starts going from a guy that's averaging 16, 17 rushes a game to a guy that's averaging 11, 12. That's where it would hurt.
So the next running back I looked at is a little pricier.
Oh, it's my
And-
turn, Dennis.
What's that?
It's my turn.
Oh, my bad.
Come on, man.
Sorry, I hosted last week. I got my ego's my head's all blown up. You know.
Oh no, I'm just playing with you. You're totally good.
I get you. Know my role. I got you.
All right. So a guy that I looked at, I did end up going with a quarterback. There was a guy that I liked, and I think you're a fairly big fan of him as well. At least I would assume so
You
here.
just call me fat.
I did. How did I do that?
Oh, big fan.
Oh, big fit. Got it. I'm going with Jared Goff. Jared Goff is, man, he's not going to be the sexy splash. You know, you're not getting Josh Allen. You're not getting Jalen Hurts. You're not getting anybody that's super sexy. But you're getting a guy that, for the most part, is a really good, steady quarterback. He could be a quarterback one. He looks amazing as a quarterback two, though. That's where you're really a championship team, is if he's your quarterback two. And here's why I like him. One, the cost isn't outrageous to acquire him. Most places that I'm seeing right here, I'm looking on the Dynasty Nerds Trade Finder. Jared Goff for Mac Hollins and a first. Jared Goff for a 25 first and a 25 second, along with Jimmy G. Jared Goff for 2 seconds and a third. Jared Goff with a couple first for Jalen Waddle. So, I mean, the price on him is really relatively inexpensive for the most part. But what really put it over the top for me is from weeks 8 through 17, he actually has the easiest schedule in fantasy football at the quarterback position. So the games that he's going to be playing are relatively easy. He's quarterback number 10 on the season right now, and he's got some really good matchups down the road. The week 14 going to the playoffs, he gets Chicago, then he gets Denver in week 15, Minnesota, who's middle of the road in 16. 17's his toughest one at Dallas. Dallas has been a little suspect all year, kind of hit and miss, so have to see there. But overall, very easy schedule, a guy that's going to help get you to a ship. So I know he's not sexy. I know he's not Josh Allen or somebody like that, but it's really tough to acquire veterans as it is this time of year. Try to get an elite veteran. Good luck. You're going to have to pay out the nose for somebody like that.
Yeah, I tried to get Goff last week in the Super Flex League. I have Burrow and Prescott, and somebody reached out. They wanted they offered me Nico Collins for Deontay Johnson and a 25 third, and I'm like, man, I got 2 quarterbacks on a bye. I'm gonna start Geno Smith because I traded for him. Can I trade one of these bye week quarterbacks, i.e. Dak Prescott, to get Goff? And so I offered Deontay Johnson, Dak Prescott, and a third for Nico Collins and Jared Goff, and got summarily rejected.
Did you?
So I ended up doing the trade for Nico Collins. I ended up sending Joe Mixon in a 25 third for him, but
okay. Nice. So
like
so
Nico.
overall,
My team's a little older. I don't have a ton of draft picks, and so I'm like, well, Collins is balling out. He's tied to a young quarterback right now. I'm going to take a shot. Maybe he doesn't amount to anything next year, but maybe he, settles in as a top 30 wide receiver.
maybe he does. Absolutely. All right, Dennis. Who's your next guy?
All right. So the next guy, kind of fallen out of favor. He had a fantastic 2022, and in 2023, the whole team seems to be going sideways, and that's Josh Jacobs. If I'm a contender, I'm looking for somebody that seems to have a lock on the market share, and in Las Vegas, it's Devontae Adams, it's Josh Jacobs, and it's Jacoby Myers, and they're starting to dole out a little bit to Michael Myers. But it's a very small pool of guys that get a significant amount of the opportunities. Jacobs, 0.97 yards before contact. That's 31st in the league. So the offensive line isn't great. It's bad. And I know you're asking yourself, well, Dennis, why do you want to acquire a running back who keeps getting hit in the backfield, right after he gets the ball? Because he's a pretty good running back, and Brandon Bolden and Amir Abdullah and Zamir White are not a threat to his market share. So he's the guy there. And Jacobs was worked hard last year, and they franchise tagged him. They brought him back. 1.7% explosive run rate, not great. 70% of the carries inside the 5. That you'd like to see that a little higher, but 47.7% route participation. That's not bad. You'd like to see it up in the 60s or so, but for a running back, 0.29 targets per route run. If we think back to what was 0.17, so for Connor, God, I can't remember the guy's name, and it's written.
You're good.
So he's got a pretty good targets per route run and a 15.4% target share. So while he is getting hit early on the ground, he's still getting the opportunities, and he's getting a decent amount of the receiving work. You're probably going to end up having to pay a mid-ish first for him. If you think that's going to put you over the top and win it for you, you've got to bite the bullet. Obviously you want to pay as little as possible. So I'm going to try to push it out there a little further, maybe go for a 25 first, with the argument that, look, if I get Jacobs, this 24 first is going to be late, but a year from now, I'm clearly not going to be as good as I am now. So the 25 first will be better. It'll be better for you. You have to wait a little longer, but it's going to be a better pick. And we're hot on the heels of that 24 class. It's going to be great. Just wait till this time next year. The 25 class is going to be sweet.
There you go. I like it. No, I think Josh Jacobs is somebody that the Dynasty community as a whole has really cooled off on. And I don't know that it's entirely justified. I get that he's been a little more consistent, especially those first 3 games or so of the year, but past few weeks haven't been nearly as bad as it was early on in the season. So if you can get a running back of Josh Jacobs' caliber, I'd be totally open to acquiring a player like that.
I mean, he's RB16 right now. It's not going to take much for him to be top 10 with the volume he gets.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you there.
I mean,
all right.
It's going to take more than Brian Hoyer, but
well, yes, that would be helpful to not have Brian Hoyer. All right. Next guy I got here, Isaiah Pacheco. Now, I'm not traditionally a guy that's going to be trading for running backs that could be replaced next year that don't have, a ton of. I'm about to sneeze. If I can hold it in. All right, I think I'm good. Normally, that doesn't have great draft capital. I'm not normally going to trade for those kind of guys. But looking at a very narrow lens, 1, he's another guy that's not crazy expensive. 2, he's also another player that has the easiest schedule at the running back position for the rest of the season. 3, his last 2 games of the year are Las Vegas, who is the 4th easiest to run against, and Cincinnati, who's the 5th easiest to run against. So 2 cupcake matchups. And what we've seen, a lot of good teams do this later in the year. They tend to run the ball a little bit more in Kansas City than they do early on. So I think that we'll see towards the end of the year, especially that Vegas game, they're going to be up early. They're going to run the ball a lot. It's colder weather. I think Isaiah Pacheco is going to be getting a lot of work towards the end of the year. and he's not going to cost you a whole bunch. I don't think you're going to have to give a first, maybe 2 seconds will get the job done, I think, for an Isaiah Pacheco. And while I wouldn't normally advocate for that type of player in a contender situation, I think it's more than worth it.
Yeah, he was a guy I considered when I was looking at running backs. I think he's another guy that has market share, and it seems relatively stable. He's getting more work in the passing game.
Mm-hmm.
The downside is that that offense is super pass heavy.
It is.
And he could have an 80% market share and it equal 3 targets and 12 carries. 3 targets and 10 carries.
Right. No, that's true. That's true. That is the biggest risk with him, but I do think they're going to run the ball a little bit more late in the year. They seem to run it a little bit more.
Bless you.
I knew that was coming. I've been waiting so long for that to happen. But yes, they tend to run the ball a little bit more late in the season. And we kind of saw that last year with him. Week 12, he got 22 carries, 14, 13, 15, 14. Like, they ran the ball with him quite a bit late in the season. I think they'll do that again this year.
So,
all right. Who you got?
I'm going to move on to wide receivers. And this one is, it's a very curious case because the general perception of DK Metcalf is that he's a stud.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also wide receiver 45.
He's been hurt.
And, he's getting Geno Smith.
Right.
So I don't know if he's going to overcome it, but I'm willing to take the shot on it. He's 21st in yards per route run at 2.25, 27.2% first read targets. That's just 26th. I expect those numbers to go up. I know that, Jake Bobo filled in admirably for him and made a beautiful catch. I get it. Jackson Smith and Jigba, they finally decided to throw him the ball more than, 2 yards away from the line of scrimmage, and he had a good game. Tyler Lockett is reliable and for his, production as much as his consistency. But I think that I think DK Metcalf, if I'm a contender with him being, having such a bad year to date, I think I'm okay to pay a mid-first for him to be able to add somebody that I think is going to finish out the year better. I think he'll be top 24, probably top 20 if I had to guess. I think that's just where his skills and ability are. But I'm also adding a young receiver too. And as a kid, we love Marvin Harrison, and he might be better than DK Metcalf in a lot of aspects. I get that. But outside of him, I don't know that there's another wide receiver in next year's class that I would take over DK Metcalf.
Sure.
So send him the 103, 104, 105, 106 for DK Metcalf to help fortify my wide receivers to make a run. I'm down for that. Yeah, whether somebody move him, you got to target those. He is a guy because of his age that teams that are in 10th, 11th, 12th place might look at it and say, well, this is a guy I can use as a building block. He's 25 years old, that approach. But I'm going to make the offer and see.
No, I think it's a very worthwhile offer. And I think because of Jackson Smith and Jigba, the worries about him, his values dropped a little bit in the public eye. And I don't think it needs to. The guy that Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be replacing is going to be Tyler Lockett, not DK Metcalf. And obviously both guys can coexist. We've seen that many, many times in Seattle there. So I think that is another one that I like. And it is nice at times, we tend to go for the older guys, but it is nice that when you get a guy that oh, I can still get another 4 years out of this guy, 5 years out of the guy. That's kind of how I felt about Jared Goff. You know, he seems a lot older than he really is. I think he's just turned 30. He
Right.
might not even be 30. He might be 29. Like he's still relatively young. So it's nice to get a guy where you're like, nah, there's still meat on that bone. It's not only for this year. I can still utilize him past, you know, the next year or two. So with you on that. All right. Well, going from a guy where you can use him for another year or two, or 3 or 4 or 5, to a guy that it's coming close to the end here. Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen, a guy that ever since we've seen Mike Williams go down, it's been goo eyes for Keenan Allen. I mean, Justin Herbert's been looking at him like crazy. Josh Palmer's been playing decent in his absence, but Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnston, none of those guys are really a threat to his target share. He is the unquestioned top alpha receiver there. And due to his age, he's very, very easy to acquire, especially if it's from a team that is middle of the road or a rebuild. I'm looking here, 24-second Kadarius Toney and Jalen Hyatt to get you Keenan Allen. Damian Pierce, Kyron Williams for Keenan Allen. Let's see. Keenan Allen for a 25 first. Keenan Allen straight up just for a second. So another one for a 24 or 25 first. So he's not that hard to acquire. Do I want to give a 25 first? Not really. But the production that he's giving, I mean, he's averaging well over 20 points a game at this point. I don't see any reason for that to not continue. And they're a team right now that they have to get more wins in that win column. Brandon Staley's on the hot seat. They've got to get some W's. You add that into, once again, pretty soft schedule. Wide receivers, 4th easiest schedule at the wide receiver position moving forward. And the last few weeks for him in particular, really, really nice. Here's what you've got. You've got week 14, you've got Denver. Week 15, you've got Vegas. Week 16, Buffalo, which sounds bad. They're the number 3 easiest schedule right now. Teams are just putting up huge points against them at the wide receiver position. And then you once again get Denver in week 17, who they've been number 8. So Denver twice, Vegas, and Buffalo, not anything I'm worried about there at the end of the season. So I think that Keenan Allen's going to absolutely feast the rest of the way, and particularly when you need it most in the fantasy football playoffs.
Yeah, that Denver twice is going to skew the stats. It's going to they're terrible.
They're pretty bad. They're pretty bad. So you get to capitalize on that if you are a Keenan Allen owner there. So Dennis, any other guys that you had on your list that you're like, I want to acquire this guy?
I got one more bargain bin. Like,
okay,
could be depth, could be you just took a hit to the tight end position, and that's Logan Thomas.
Okay,
he's tight end 13 on the season. He missed a game. You can get him for probably a late 3rd or even a 4th round pick. People overlook him. He's 12th in air yards for tight ends with 225 yards, 14% air yard share. He's 6th in QB rating when being targeted. He's got a cute Sam Howell, Mr. A sack for me and a sack for me and a sack for me and a sack for me. 117.1 when targeting Logan Thomas. He's 14th in team yards across all the league, 14.9%. He's just a reliable guy that's having another good year. You know, what was it? 3 years ago, he had this phenomenal breakout season. He deals with injuries a lot, former quarterback, but he's big, 6'6", 250-pounder, and he's become a really, really good tight end. And Washington, if they can keep Howell upright, they put up some yardage. They don't maybe score as many points as you'd like, but Logan Thomas is dirt cheap to help fortify your tight end position.
I don't hate that. I really don't. He is somebody that the nice part about him is the cost to acquire him is almost nothing. Like nothing. He is super cheap. But in the scenario that we talked about earlier, where you have Travis Kelce and you're flying high, or TJ Hawkinson's crushing for you or whatever, and then dang it, week 13, pull a hammy and they're going to be missing some time, or something even worse where it puts them out the rest of the season. Knock on wood, heaven forbid that happens, but those types of things do happen. You want somebody that at least isn't going to tank your season, because I can't get more than 5 points for this guy. Logan Thomas is somebody that can get you double-digit points, maybe not every week, but more consistently than other guys are able to.
Probably, 75%, 70%. He's going to be in that double-digit area.
60% of the time, it works every time.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
All right. Well, my last guy is also a tight end. We both ended at the tight end position here. I went with a slightly bigger name, but because he's only been okay. Now, this week was a pretty good week for him, but this season so far, he's only been okay. He's an older player, so people aren't as interested in him, but preseason, the hype for a top 3 season was there for Darren Waller. And while that's cooled down, it's partly because they've just been such a hot mess on offense. But his last 3 games of the season, he gets New Orleans, who's the 10th easiest at the position, Philadelphia, who's the easiest matchup for the tight end. And it makes sense. At first, I was like, Philly is? That's a great defense. But what do? They limit big plays and they stop the run. So where are they vulnerable? In the middle of the field on those short routes, those 5 to 10 yard plays. That's where Darren Waller can absolutely feast. So he gets the number 1 easiest schedule in the semis, and then the number 2 easiest, which is the LA Rams in the championship game. So you want to face the easiest and the second easiest teams in the 2 most important weeks. Yeah, give me Darren Waller in that situation. And whether it's Daniel Jones or whether it's Tyrod Taylor, we've both seen them.
I'd almost rather it be Tyrod.
Right? Almost rather it be Tyrod Taylor. No matter who it is, that's going to be the matchup to go to. Both guys are willing to throw it to him, but especially Tyrod Taylor from what we saw this past week. So the cost is relatively cheap to get Darren Waller. And yes, you're only getting another year or 2 probably out of him, but I think he's a worthwhile pickup on those contending teams, especially if you're somebody that's having to start, as much as I love the guy, Cole Kmet, Jake Ferguson, Hunter Henry, that David Njoku, those mid-tier guys, I think especially late in the season, Darren Waller is going to be much more steady for you.
Yeah, he's the leading receiver there. I know Wandale's come on. And here's what I don't get about the Giants. Daniel Jones is a very mobile quarterback. Tyrod Taylor is a mobile quarterback. But yet one of them is able to get the ball downfield to Jalen Hyatt or Darius Slayton or Darren Waller. And the other one just can't seem to see past the line of scrimmage.
It does seem pretty odd. It does seem pretty odd. For what it's worth, last 3 games for Darren Waller, 16.6 points, 9.3, and 22.8. So he's putting up legitimate tight end 1, top half tight end 1 numbers, because to say somebody's a tight end 1 doesn't really mean a whole lot. But if we're getting inside that top 6, that's where that starts to actually become relevant at the position. And that's what we've seen the past couple weeks. And the targets have been there too. 11 targets, 7 targets, and 8 targets. So that's from both Daniel Jones and Tyrod Taylor. So I don't think it matters who it is. They're starting to see where their bread is actually buttered, and that's with a guy named Darren Waller.
So let's take a look at Pats fans' question there real quick. Seems like he's got a rebuild team that's accidentally 3-4 and has some really, really great assets. 4 first-round picks next year and 4 second-round picks. What should he do? Should he go? I think he wants to know, should he start to trade away those picks and compete this year? Wait till next year? I don't know. I feel like if you're in a rebuild at 3-4, my first question is, where are you in points scored?
Yeah.
If you're bottom 6 in points scored, keeping the rebuild. If you're top 4 in points scored, maybe you do try to make some moves.
If I'm making a move, here's what I'm doing. One, I'm going after specifically the wide receiver position, because if the rebuild takes longer than you expected, oh well, not a big deal. I acquired young receivers. But if you're able to compete this year, awesome. So that's where going after he's really expensive at the moment, but the AJ Browns of the world, the guy you just mentioned, DK Metcalf, guys that are in their prime at the moment at the wide receiver position, those are the types of guys that I'm probably more apt to go after. Maybe even a guy that's down a little bit right now, like a T. Higgins, where you might be able to get him a little bit cheaper than you would other times of the year or at other points of his career. You compare him with a Brandon Ayuk, and then you can kind of see where you're at. But the tough part here is you don't want to get yourself in a spot where you acquired a bunch of only win now pieces and you didn't have quite enough to make it, and now you're having to start the rebuild all over again.
Yeah, looking at his roster, he listed there. His wide receivers, top 2 are Ayuk and Dotson, and it's not great after Dotson. So, and then his tight ends are Musgrave and McBride. Musgrave looks good and McBride looks good, but I don't know that they're ready for prime time yet. Decent running backs with Brees and Javonte, but yeah, I think actually, looking at his roster that he listed there, I think you keep hold steady, go for the rebuild, and unless it's a potential point decides the starting lineup, try to lose some more games.
Try to be worse, please. All right, Dennis. Well, that wraps things up for us. Great job tonight on those contender buys. Let everyone know what you're working on and where they can find you.
Well, getting ready to put together our mock draft 1.0. Everybody's made their submissions, and so our first rookie mock draft will be out at the beginning of next week. Looking forward to that. I'm at culture_coach on the X machine. All
right. And I am at Dynasty Price on the Xbox. I wish you got to go back to that, Dennis. I like the Xbox better. On the old Xbox there. You can find me at Dynasty Price. All kinds of good things coming up. Make sure you're listening to the Dynasty Nerds podcast. Drops each and every Wednesday, and you get 2 of them if you are part of the Nerd Herd. So appreciate everyone. Appreciate Peter joining us, talking about some of those rebuild guys we're targeting. Appreciate Heavy T behind the scenes making all of this. What's that?
Peter's a cool cat.
He's a pretty cool cat, that is for sure. Appreciate all you guys tuning in. We will be back here same time, same place next week, next Wednesday, and we'll have a great show planned for you then. Until then, we'll see you.